Hi everyone, welcome back to The Mystic in the Woods. I'm Kate, and today we are going to do the tag that's going around top 11 current favorites by Amethyst Ascension Tarot, I believe. I'm going to link everything and tag everything below, of course. So generally when we kind of hit these season changes, I do a lot of deck lists, right? Like decks I've been using in the winter or the spring, etc. So I thought that this was a good opportunity to kind of talk about the decks that I've been using over the winter and coming into this spring, and just have like a cozy, fun chat about tarot with you guys, because we had a really nice weekend here where the weather was finally like sunny and 50s and 60, because I live in really northern Wisconsin, so we still have a little bit of ice outside, a little bit of snow, and today it's like cold and windy and gray. And so I'm wearing like the comfy clothes, and I just thought it would, like, let's just have a fun chat about tarot, right? I'm finishing my coffee. Let's talk about my favorite decks that I've been using recently, as opposed to like my top decks of all time, right? So I really do like this tag, and I've really enjoyed watching some of these videos, because I do also kind of have trouble with those top 10 lists. You know, there's definitely a few even decks that are on this list today that would definitely make a top 10 list, but then I really quickly regret how I create those lists, because I love so many of my decks. So we're going to do this today, my current top 11 favorites, the decks I've been using kind of this winter and this spring, just a lot. So let's start with kind of the decks I was using this winter, and then we'll move into my spring decks, and we'll just kind of go in that order. And I have a couple of new decks that I'm really excited to talk about, so let's just jump in. Now, first, to absolutely no one's surprise, is going to be the Witch Sisters Tarot. I used this all winter, constantly. This was pretty much the only tarot deck that I was pulling from if I was reading for myself. And it was pretty much the only tarot deck that I was using for my daily draws as well. I won't talk too much about this deck. I need to do a full review, because this is, like, if I'm going to do a top 3 tarot decks, this is absolutely on it. This is absolutely one of my top 3 tarot decks of all time. I love absolutely everything about it. So I will do a full review of this deck so we can really talk about it, and I can send you to that instead of, you know, talking about it constantly in every single one of these videos. But this deck is so earthy and so witchy, and connects me just to my path personally and professionally as a priestess in a way that almost none of my other decks do. So that's the Witch Sister Tarot. Now, I was using this constantly all winter, and I was pairing it with primarily the Dragon Fay Oracle by Lucy Cavendish, and oddly enough, the Megan Watterson Oracle, the Mary Magdalene Oracle by Megan Watterson. Okay, now let's talk about these two decks. So I've had this Oracle for a while. I was slow to purchase because I don't particularly love the artwork. I was slow to purchase, and then it sat on my shelf for a while, and I really didn't reach for it. This winter, I've really enjoyed using this deck. I have been using it to create content for my temple members, to create guided journeys during our ceremony. I have been using it in combination with the Witch Sisters Tarot for my daily draws. I'll just show you a couple of these. The artwork just really surprisingly like juxtaposes. There's a good juxtaposition, right, between these artwork styles for me. And I have found that the colors actually go together really beautifully. And that my lineages, right, where I sit with and work with the most and teach within the most, are, you know, the sort of biblical goddesses, so Mary Magdalene, and a more Celtic Northern European tradition. And these two decks have actually come together really beautifully to help me really begin to understand how these two, you know, separate traditions, separate lineages fit together for me, again, personally and in my work. And And I've really enjoyed working with these two decks together. Now, the other deck I've been using a lot is Lucy Cavendish's Oracle of the Dragon Fay. This is not a new deck, and I am new to it. So I only purchased it this winter, and I have the version with the matte cardstock. So this is the newer printing, I guess. And I don't love that there are different artists within the deck. I'm not generally a big fan of having different artists within a single deck. But that's just me. And the artwork is lovely. And I really like the key phrases. And I'm really enjoying the guidebook. Now, I realize that sounds like a very mediocre review, right? Like the artwork is good, the keywords are good, the guidebook is good. But here's the deal. Dragon energy, and I do have another dragon deck on my list. We're going to talk about the the Smoke, Ash, and Ember Tarot here in a minute. Dragon energy has become really, really important for me on my personal path, and really beginning to understand dragon energy mythologically, dragon energy as earth energy, as sacred feminine energy, what the dragon mythologies can show us, the mysteries that they hold, especially within the Western mystery traditions, what they can teach us about shadow work and reclaiming the sacred feminine and reclaiming the sacred masculine. And as I've been continuing to explore Avalon and those traditions, of course, the Fae comes up, right? I have another Fae deck on my list. And there's something about the way, like here's Morgan Le Fay. There's my girl, Morgan Le Fay, one of my primary guides. And the reason that dragon energy is so important to me, although I do really associate Lilith with dragon energy as well. Where is I going with that? Oh, yes. So the way that Lucy has put together this concept of Dragon Fay really works for me. Like, I really understand that. It's a way that I can conceptualize these energies and put them into boxes with labels that make sense to me, right? So the thing about all of our spiritual stuff and the divine and the deities and the energies that we're talking about is that we're always, as humans, trying to categorize them so we can understand them. And that's not really how all this ethereal stuff works, but it does help us as we're, in our human brains and in our human bodies to kind of have these concepts and these boxes and ways to categorize things. So Oracle of the Dragon Fay, I have really, really loved, and I have actually considered creating some workshops or some master classes around this deck as well and this concept. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know. Now, two other decks that I use pretty consistently throughout the winter and continue to use is the Circle of Doors Tarot and the Archetypes deck by Kim Kranz. Now, again, these two decks are not going to surprise anybody. I've talked about these a lot on the channel. I don't think I have a full review of this deck yet, but I need to create one because this is, for me, when I want to talk to the goddess, I want to talk to the sacred feminine. I want to channel that for a client, for myself, for a ceremony, something like that. This deck never lets me down. This deck is so magical and such a potent portal into the sacred feminine. And I will say that the way that the imagery comes across on the screen does not do it justice, okay? It is much more beautiful in person. Now, this is an indie deck, and this is, it's an investment to purchase. I will say that if the artwork pulls to you at all, if calls to you at all, I do believe that this deck is worth saving up for and worth having in your collection. I would rather have this one deck than 10 other less expensive decks in my collection. And this would absolutely make any top 5, any top 10 deck list, whether it's decks in general or tarot specifically. Because this deck really just... it's been a really powerful deck for me to have in my collection, and I really, really, I really have a lot of reverence for that deck. One of the deck lists I am planning on doing here at some point is kind of like my most sacred decks or my most revered decks, and that deck would definitely be at the top there. So then, of course, Archetypes deck by Kim Krans has not fallen out of rotation since I purchased it. I do have a full review of this one on the channel. And I don't use it daily. I don't use it constantly, but it is consistently in the rotation. I use it consistently. I reach for it consistently. I use it as a clarifier, and I also use it to sort of give me the big picture of the reading. I will use it to understand, of course, what archetype I'm working with in a reading. This deck really adds a lot to a reading. And I've really been happy that I purchased this. I even ended up getting, I think I already mentioned this on the channel, the pocket edition, so that when I travel, you know, if I'm looking for a deck that can do it all, like I want an Oracle deck that I can bring with me and really do it all with, this is the deck. So I finally purchased myself the pocket edition so that when I travel, I can just bring this instead of this whole deck. But I do like the full size most of the time. So anyway, I won't talk about this deck too much, but I have been using it to clarify, yes, and I do have a clarification video planned because I've had some questions about that. About how to clarify, how I use Oracle decks within a reading, things like that. If you're on my email list especially, you know my capacity has been kind of low lately as I've really it's been one trauma for me after another this winter, and so I've really had to honor where my nervous system is and the capacity that I have for teaching. And so deck lists like this are fun and they're enjoyable, and they don't, they don't cost a lot. They don't pull a lot at my capacity. So I do have some teaching videos planned, such as how to use a clarifying deck. I just haven't had quite the capacity to put those together yet, but I do have clarifying videos, a clarification deck video coming out, as well as a shadow work video for tips for getting started. This is an excellent shadow work deck also, which I'm also considering doing a tarot and shadow work masterclass. If that's something anybody would be interested in, let me know, kind of like how to use tarot in your shadow work practice and oracle. But anyway, apparently I'm very, very rambly today in this video, so I apologize for that. But these are the decks that I have been using this winter. And then, of course, some of these are just in consistent rotation for me, probably forever. But as we've moved into the spring, actually, there's two more, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so we're at 5. We've got 6 left. Let's actually talk about 2 more before we really get into the spring. So one is the Tarot of the Huntress by Kara Small. I have the 2nd edition. I did not order either of the Persephone decks, although I'm hoping that she's going to do another one of the Chthonic version because I would love to have that now. This type of art deck doesn't usually speak to me. But I can't remember whose video I was watching, if it was Ruby or if it was Racine. I was watching somebody's video and they were talking about this deck. And I just really felt intrigued, so I ordered it. Now, this was a deck I wanted to do an unboxing of, but it came to me right when I was at a low point this winter, and I did not have the capacity to do an unboxing, but I wanted to open the deck, so I did. This is the backing of this edition. All the forest vibes. I live in the forest, and in the winter, one of the archetypes that's always really calling to me is either the Wild Woman archetype, so definitely like Witch Sisters Tarot, Wild Woman archetype, and also this archetype, the Artemis Diana, Goddess of the Hunt archetype, always really calls to me in the winter. So I ordered this deck and I started to use it. And the interesting thing is that this type of artwork, I'm just going to skip some of the nudity images because I don't think YouTube likes that. This type of artwork deck doesn't usually speak to me. And this deck is still not one I've used a ton because of my limited capacity, but I love this deck. This deck is so special. It really brings you into Diana Artemis, Goddess of the Hunt, Huntress energy, which of course it is supposed to, right? It's a Tarot of the Huntress. It really does that. I love the images that were chosen. So like here's Justice and we have the Hounds. This is the Queen of Water. There's some nudity here. I'm going to show this anyway. I love this Queen of Water. Here's Strength with the Stag. Like, I don't have a lot to say about this deck yet. Only because I still haven't used it a ton. But when I have used it, I've really, really loved this deck. And I've used it a couple of times for some business type readings for myself, and it has been straight to the point. Give me the information, which to me, the archetype of that Artemis and Diana sit within, the archetype of the Huntress. She's goal oriented, among many other things, right? But she's goal oriented. She's on the hunt. She knows what to focus on and when to focus on it and when to tune everything else out. And this deck has definitely had that feeling in a few of the readings that I've done with it. Really like, here's what you need to focus on. Here's how, here's what not to focus on. I'll talk more about this deck as I get to know it a little bit, but I am completely infatuated with it. Giant crush. Can't wait to see where this goes. Won't be surprised if it ends up on like a top 10 tarot deck list at some point here. And it's really taken me out of my typical art style, my typical windows into each card meaning, that type of thing. And so I've really found that, oftentimes it is the decks that I am intrigued by, but don't fit my normal aesthetic that I end up having the most powerful experiences with. So, Tarot of the Huntress, Cara Small, excellent. Okay. I've also been using, jumping out of my hands, my Spirit Keepers Tarot, and really finding the next level of, this is my backup copy that's not even open yet, so we'll just look at a couple of them in order here. I didn't realize that when I grabbed this box. So this is the newer printing then. We'll look at them in order. But I have really been finding a deeper new love affair with the Spirit Keepers Tarot, and I'm really glad that I do have this backup copy. There are 3 versions of the Fool in this deck before we get into the Magician. And as I've said before, this is an amazing study deck. This is a deck that definitely hits any top 10 list for me. And I've really been spending some time with this recently, one card at a time, really spending time with the guidebook, really spending time seeing which symbols are standing out to me on the card, these kinds of things. So anyway, we will just talk about that one briefly because I do talk about that a lot on the channel as well. And I have really enjoyed, we won't put that back on, the little plastic. I've really enjoyed finding another level of depth with my Spirit Keepers Tarot this winter. Now, as we've moved into spring, and spring here, I think I mentioned this in a previous video, I've really had to work on my relationship with spring because we tend to be cold and have periodic snow until all of a sudden it's more summer. So I've had to kind of rework my relationship with the spring to include periodic snow, to see the beauty in like where we are right now in the season. We're just starting to see buds on the trees. Everything is still brown. There's pockets of snow. And so we're in that very earthy early spring where I live. And the decks that I'm going to show you really reflect that. So one that I've pulled out is what is this deck? I can't even think of this deck. This is the Brian Froud, just Fairies Oracle. This is the Brian Froud Fairies Oracle. And I've been pulling this deck kind of in place of my Archetypes deck recently. So I don't use this one to clarify. I don't find it to be a good clarifier because there aren't really keywords on these cards. But I have been using it as a single draw for itself or as a part of the main spread. So often I'll pull like one oracle card, and then 3 tarot cards. And then if I pull clarifiers from another deck, I'll layer those on top. And so this has been taking the place of my archetype deck for a lot of my readings, where it sits at the top of the spread, giving me the overall theme of the reading. And then the tarot fleshes it out, and then I pull any clarifiers from there. So I've really enjoyed the accuracy of this deck, the way that it connects me to the Fae and to the elements. And it's been a really long time since I've used this deck with any regularity. So it's been kind of fun to just approach it with no expectations, almost with a fresh relationship. Like we're just starting over, me in this deck. And I've really, really enjoyed it. I think we'll just leave it there. I've really enjoyed it. Maybe I'll talk about that more as everything unfolds. So the next deck I want to talk about before we talk about a couple more Oracle decks is the Ash Ember. I can't remember. This is the 3 Trees Tarot Dragon deck. Okay? I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Now, I have the Oak, Ash, and Thorn Tarot. Adorable. Enjoy it. I don't reach for it a lot. I've had trouble kind of connecting with that deck. I love it. I think it's beautiful. This is not at all a comment on the creators or the deck itself. I just, for whatever reason, haven't connected with it very well. I still have it because I love it, and I do really want their Oracle deck. But this deck, as I was looking for dragon decks, I've really had trouble finding dragon decks that depict dragons in the way that I experience the energy, that feel the way that I experience dragons. And when I was looking at the artwork for this deck, I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this deck a try. Now, this deck also came to me at a very low point this winter. So I've only been using it now the last spring, like the last month or so. And I really love this deck. I'm really, really enjoying this deck. It is dragon energy in more of a gentle way, but dragon energy can be gentle. Okay, so for example, like here's this Queen of Pentacles. Or even here, the Queen of Swords. I love the Suit of Swords in this deck. And I have really found this deck not only to be accurate to how I experience dragon energy when they're being more gentle, I have found it very easy to read. It's very easy to see the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery in here. So like here's the 5 of Cups, the sun. This is such a pretty sun. It's very easy to see the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. Here's the 4 of Swords. And also have kind of a new way into it. But the deck has also been gentle with me as I'm trying to kind of step back out of this grief portal that I've been in. And I decided a couple of weeks ago that I really wanted to do a tarot study, spend some time, in study with the tarot, and really do another round of focusing on the elements, like how the elemental associations really impact each meaning. I've just really been pulled to do a round of study into specifically the elements when it comes to each card. And I spent a little time kind of like, which deck, do I want to use for that? And obviously there are lots of great decks to use for that. And then I decided I would go with this deck. I would use this deck for that study, because this is how I experience dragon energy, in that, of course, all dragons kind of have this fire association, right? But I also experience them very elementally. So we have earth dragons, we have water dragon, we have air dragons, So I decided to go ahead and use this deck for that. And it's been really fun to really kind of dive into tarot in that capacity. I'm actually kind of doing 2 tarot studies right now, which I can talk about in another video if you guys want. But part of that is really diving into the elements. And so I've decided to use this deck for that, and I've really, really enjoyed it. Now, for clarifiers for these, stepping here into spring, I have pulled back out this deck. Is this Woodland Wardens? I can't think of the name of this. I think it's Woodland Wardens. I have pulled this deck back out, and this deck and I have certainly had a break. I'm sorry I keep bumping the mic today. Have certainly had a break this winter. I don't think I've really pulled it out at all. I've really been using, when I've read for other people and I needed Clarifier, I've reached for the Terra Oracle a lot. We'll put this on, I'll set this here as like a honorable mention. I'll do 2 honorable mentions for us quick at the end. But I've pulled this deck back out as my clarifier for my readings for a couple of reasons. First of all, hello, look at these 2 decks together. I'm sorry, but just look at these 2 decks together. This is so cute. And I've really been in that place where I need that cute gentleness, right? And this deck is a fantastic clarifier, standing on its own. And I've also really been stepping into herbal medicine and herbal magic this winter. I should say early spring. And so I just being in that energy, I just wanted a deck that was reflecting some of that. So I pulled this deck out. And actually, part of my inspiration to do a round of elemental tarot study was stepping into herbal medicine and herbal magic, where each herb has an elemental association. And of course, because of the way my brain works, when I'm reading a book, any book, it could be fiction, it could be about herbs, it could be about something else entirely, I see tarot cards. I see the author will describe, dandelion and its associations and what it does and the energy of the plant and and a tarot card comes to mind. Oh, that's this tarot card. And so as I've been stepping into herbal medicine and I was really looking at the associations and tarot cards were coming to mind, I was like, I'd really actually like to do another round of elemental tarot study. Anyway, this deck has been the one that I've been using for, not really in that practice specifically, but just as my clarifier, because it has that herbal component. And then the elemental component, right? I've pulled back out my Illuminated Earth Oracle, which I've had a little break from this deck, but it is on a top 10 list for me. And it is a very elemental deck for me. This is a very intuitive, elemental feeling deck. So here's the water card, every element is represented. But here, this one says disguise, structure. When I look at these images, I feel them in my body. And I feel this deck very elementally, very earthy. So I've pulled this one back out because I'm in that elemental energy, right? So I pulled this one back out as well. Both as a clarifier or as again, to pull at the top of the spread, or to bring in an element of feeling into the tarot spread as well. So this deck has come back into my rotation, and I've really enjoyed reconnecting with this deck as well. So those are my top 11 current favorites, and ones that I've used really a lot this winter and now stepping into spring. I will say about this the cardstock on these decks is that it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and it's like an eco-friendly cardstock. You do need to be careful with it. I am very hard on my stuff. I am very hard on my decks. And so one of the things that's been nice about this deck, as I have been in a phase in time, I can't stop bumping stuff today. As I have really been in this phase where my nervous system needs me to be slow and intentional, which is why I really love the herbal practice. I need to be slow, I need to be gentle, I need to be intentional. This deck offers that gentleness in the imagery and in the messages, and the cardstock really asks me to slow down, to be intentional, to be gentle when I'm handling this deck. I saw a nick in the cardstock, which is completely on me because, again, very hard on my stuff. But you are going to want to be gentle with this deck. Whereas, like, this deck, I've been not gentle with at all. And I've not had a problem with this one. So for two quick runner-ups, honorable mentions, when I've read for other people this winter, the two primary decks that have been coming forward have been my Silver Acorn Tarot, which I've talked about on the channel before and should probably do a full review on as well. It's really been this deck, which is, I think, I have my Modern Hue Tarot, which is my favorite Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It is the Rider-Waite-Smith line work in a new color palette. So that's my favorite Rider-Waite-Smith deck specifically. But the Darkness of Light Tarot, which I think I have sitting here, and my Silver Acorn Tarot are my two favorite decks that are just very, very close to the Rider-Waite-Smith. They're my two favorite closest to the Rider-Waite-Smith decks. So anyway, this is one that comes forward a lot when I am reading for other people. It's just so easy to read. It's so Rider-Waite-Smith. And for whatever reason, it just works with my intuition, right? When I put these cards down, I know what the messages are. I know what's coming through. And if I don't, I've been using my Terra Oracle deck, which is certainly one of my favorite animal decks and one of my favorite clarifiers. So we'll talk about this some more on the channel coming up. But this has been the clarifying deck that I have really pulled to go with it. So primarily when I've read for other people, it's been the Archetype deck. It has been the Silver Acorn Tarot and this, and the Terra Oracle have primarily been the decks I'm using. So that is it for today, I guess. Those are my top favorite decks. Don't forget to check out the podcast, the Reclamation Hour podcast, where my co-host Alexandra and I really talk about all things sacred feminine. It's not so tarot focused, but we do have shadow work episodes. We just did one on deity work. Definitely check that out. And don't forget that if you're watching this in April, my reclamation program is open until the 30th. And that's my deep dive program into the sacred feminine, shadow work, good girl conditioning, all that stuff. But all of the links are below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.